It is Monday, May 18th here on Mike's News Blitz, a news segment show thing I'm calling here on the channel. I think maybe it'll be a show, maybe it'll be a segment. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be, but it's going to be a thing where I kind of run down maybe, 5, 6, who knows, maybe some days it's 2 or 3 or 4. I don't know what it's going to be exactly. Don't hold me to anything. But we're going to try to go over some news stories here that I think are interesting or that I find interesting or just things like that. Could be, there's no real set thing. It could be NBA, football, baseball, basket. I already said basketball. Could be hockey if I get interested. If it's something in hockey I'm interested in. It could be MMA. I'm a big MMA fan. There's something on here for me talking about MMA. Could even be pro wrestling, NASCAR, even. Anything that I'm interested in sports, I'm going to talk about here on this channel. So, number one here, and this is kind of a funny story, I think, honestly, just because I think it's funny. Jacoby Brissett is a holdout currently, and I just find that fascinating. The guy won one game last year. I think he started 12 games. He went 1-11. I don't even know if he's like the guaranteed starter there in Arizona. I mean, I know they brought in Gardner Minshew. They drafted Carson Beck. I mean, like, those options aren't that different from Jacoby Brissett, so I don't understand. He's holding out to get, he wants, like, starter money when he's, like, not really a real starter. He's, like, more like a starter in a pinch. Granted, the pinch last year was, I think they thought maybe that Kyler Murray would probably, if Kyler Murray started the whole season, once he was healthy, they probably would have won a couple more games. I'm not sure how many, but they were probably trying to get in line to get a quarterback or something like that. They weren't in line to do that. And yeah, so Jacoby Brissett holding out. What does that mean for the Cardinals? I don't know. Does anyone really care about the Arizona Cardinals? Do they have a lot of fans out there? I don't know. Jacoby Brissett, decent backup, quarterback. If your quarterback's out and hurt, and he can probably come in, start in a pinch, start a couple games, but he's not like a real full-time starter. I think anytime that's ever been tried, he's shown that he's just not good enough to do that. I know, actually, he threw however many touchdowns and interceptions. It's like, if you actually watch any of those Cardinals games, those games were usually blowouts. He would, was really inefficient in crunch time, third down, things like that. He would put up some garbage time numbers once the game was out of hand, pad his stats, looked decent, but really didn't run an efficient offense. Wasn't very good, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't really think this matters for the Cardinals. That's why I think the Cardinals don't really care. It's like, all right, don't show up if you want. We'll just start Gardner Minshew then. The play is not going to be that much different anyways. So yeah, let's get into this next one here. Next one here on this list, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers reporting to OTAs, coming back for one final season, I assume. With the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike McCarthy. I think everyone kind of expected this to happen if he was going to play. I'm not sure why anyone thought there was I know there was some sort of weird report out there where it's like, maybe he could go to the Cardinals. I didn't see that happening. Yeah, Rodgers back with the Steelers. I thought he played well last year. I thought there was kind of that midpoint where I think the offense just got mucked up because it just got mucked up, honestly. I just feel like that roster was a little weird. You know what I mean? It's like, what if we have a bunch of receivers that can't create separation? And it's like, that's probably not going to go well at times, right? There's going to be games where if you don't have the run game going and you don't got like screens going or anything like that, you're going to have a bad time. And that kind of happened a little bit there, but they were able to win both games against a pretty decent Baltimore Ravens squad, put up some good numbers. I thought Rodgers played great in both games versus the Ravens, played really well. I believe both games versus the Bengals. Then one of those Browns games, they were too concerned with making sure Myles Garrett didn't break the sack record and not concerned enough with winning the game. That was more of a Mike Tomlin thing, where it's like, that's what we're concerned about. It's like, no, you should be concerned about winning the game. I don't care if Myles Garrett gets the sack record. If anything, I would have told Aaron Rodgers, let him get the sack record in the first half. They're going to celebrate about that. They're going to have a big adrenaline dump, and then we'll just kind of march up and down the field and score on them. And, because they're going to be so excited about the record. That's what I would have did personally. But Tomlin did not want Myles Garrett to break that record versus the Steelers. that meant a lot to them, and I felt like it probably cost them a game right there late in the season, which put them in a win and you're in scenario in week 18, which they did get through. Needed a missed kick, but still. That should not have been the main concern. The main concern should have just been winning the game. I think the Steelers, with Rodgers, I actually think they're going to be good this year, for the simple fact that it's a new staff there in Pittsburgh. A year of me, kind of, I'm an Aaron Rodgers guy. Me dick riding for Rodgers, pause, led me to, so once he left the Packers, I was like, all right, wherever Rodgers go, that's where I'm going to root for a year or two or wherever. Led me to root for the Jets, which was not great. Then led me here to Pittsburgh, and I have found out so much from these Pittsburgh fans where, boy, I had no clue like how dysfunctional people felt or how much people didn't really particularly care for Mike Tomlin here in the end. Staff, there's just times where you watch the Steelers, like, why are they doing things on defense? And it's just like, well, that's just the staff like that. Those are like Tomlin's guys and all this other stuff. I think it's a good change of scenery for everyone involved. Tomlin going to do TV for a year or two, Mike McCarthy and bringing in his staff there. I thought he did pretty well in Dallas. It's just, Jerry Jones is a psychopath. So that's why I think that didn't work out. I thought Mike McCarthy ran good offenses there. Defenses were fine. I mean, that was the level those teams were going to get to. They were going to make the playoffs and get bounced. I mean, those teams, I don't think they were great. I don't think a coach is going to make a difference for the Dallas Cowboys. But yeah, so Rodgers back. And I think that's it for what I have for the NFL today. And for the number 3 story here today that I am somewhat interested in talking about is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wins his second MVP back-to-back this time. And that is pretty cool for him. But I think one of the things that I'm interested in with that is I think Shai, I'm going to say this right now, will likely be his last MVP. And the reason why I say that is because if you look through the recent history of MVPs, players, they'll usually win back-to-back. And then either that or they get a pity one like Joel Embiid got. Joel Embiid clearly got a pity MVP. That was very much, ESPN and Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A. Smith and all those guys making that like a race thing. It's just very fascinating. I mean, it took a very good understanding of NBA writers and how they're like kind of like these, Brooklyn-y, white, nerdy guys who like the worst thing possible for them is to be accused of being a racist. Right? Like that's like, they're terrified of that. Like they can be accused of anything, almost anything else, and they're fine with that. But if you were to accuse them of being a racist, they would just completely crumble. They'd be like, no. Like, so that's how Joel Embiid got his one MVP, 100%. But everything else is usually, back-to-back winners. And then you don't ever win one again, right? Giannis won back-to-back. I think Harden might have won back-to-back, I believe. I think Jokic might have won back-to-back. Now Shai's winning here back-to-back. Doubt he'll win another one, so I don't know. My guess is next MVP, if I had to take a wild guess, we're going to see, or this is going to be the era of Wemby winning MVPs. Then I have no clue who's after that. Granted, and Wemby might just win 7, 8 MVPs in a row because how much the NBA media loves Victor Wembanyama. I mean, for Christ's sakes, he elbowed Naz Reid right in the throat, and he didn't even get suspended for a game. I mean, which is just, and then the media's like, Wemby, this was a great redemption game for him. It's like, what redemption? He got thrown from a game for elbowing a guy in the throat. That's completely dangerous and deranged. Wasn't even the main guy hitting him. He just elbowed poor Naz Reid right in the throat. And then the media's like, Wemby really carried himself well. I was like, what? He should have been tossed. What are we talking about here? So I'm not sure what I'm going on about. Well, actually, speaking of, Wemby, the Thunder taking on the San Antonio Spurs. This is going to be a great series, I think. I think really look at these two teams. These are likely the two teams that are going to be running the NBA for the next however many years here that they can, keep it together. Both of these teams, I think probably still have a good 3 to 4, maybe 5 years where they can keep most of their core components together. So this could be something we see just yearly unless they match up in the semifinals where, the Western Conference Finals is likely going to be the Spurs and it's likely going to be the Thunder. It's going to be just these two teams battling the hell out of each other. This could turn into, I think, one of the best rivalries in the NBA. But yeah, SGA, second MVP, going for a second championship. I personally think whoever comes out of the West, that is likely going to be your NBA champion. In my opinion, I just don't see a team in the East beating either one of these squads here. But let's talk about who could be potentially coming out of the East here with these next story I got. Story number 4 here. I'm not sure how this video is coming together, but I hope it's coming together good for you and hope you're enjoying it. Story number 4. Cavs absolutely dismantle the Pistons. That wasn't even a game by like what, midway. It felt like midway through the first quarter. It was like, oh, we kind of see how this one's going. You know, for the Pistons, I don't know what exactly they can do here. I don't know what the assets they have. They're going to have to swing a trade. I mean, simple as that. They're going to have to swing, and I don't know what that trade is. I don't know who they're going to trade for. You know, this could be a weird Kevin Durant destination at this point. You know, Kevin Durant could just kind of be like a mercenary and you just kind of try him out on these different teams and kind of say, hey, can he come in and kind of, you know, they needed another guy who can make some shots. The Pistons did. And it wasn't going to be Tobias Harris. You know, Cade Cunningham did as much as he could. Everyone else on that team, it was just like, what's going on here? I mean, you know, Jalen Duren, I mean, just a complete shriveled job here in the playoffs. I mean, just absolutely did not look like he belonged as a competent piece on a championship contending team. Now, again, he is a young player. And I feel like we always forget this about some of these guys, is these are young players. These guys are still very, very young. They still have room to grow as players. You know, everyone's always writing guys off after a year or two. It's like, that's not what you should be doing. You should not just be writing people off because they have 1 or 2 rough playoff series, you know, before they're like 25 years old, 25, 26 years old. I mean, you have to let these guys grow as players. That maturation process, it does take time. It's not the same for everyone. Not everyone just goes up, 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 up. You know, some people it's peaks and valleys and things like that. So with that, you know, the Pistons, I don't think they've blown their opportunity. I don't, you know, there's no juggernaut in the Eastern Conference right now. I think a lot of that does have to do with the fact the way the lottery was set up for so many. I don't know how this new lottery system is going to change that. I do wonder if we're going to see less of these Western. I just feel like the issue for the Eastern Conference and why it's not as stacked is because the Eastern Conference teams kind of get screwed in the lottery. And they've been getting screwed in the lottery for the past couple of years where, you know, it's Western Conference teams constantly jumping when they shouldn't be, right? I feel like if things were how they should be, I feel like these conferences would be a little more balanced. But you see it right now with the Western Conference Finals, you know, where it's these like 2 stacked teams of just like lottery picks. You know, and it's funny to see Adam Silver in the NBA kind of pull up the ladder on the rest of the NBA after these 2 juggernauts get built in the West. These 2 juggernauts of just all lottery picks get built in the West. Now it's like, all right, we have to change. We have to reform the lottery because we don't want people stacking and things like that, which I think is funny, right? I think that's very, very funny. Like that's so odd. Who do I think is going to win this Eastern Conference Finals? I don't really know. This is kind of a pick 'em, honestly. I mean, it kind of just whoever you feel with. Could be, you know, I really don't know. If I'm being honest, I really, really, really don't know. I really have no clue. I don't really have a favorite here. You know, I think it all comes down to who's the best player on the floor, right? I always feel like these series always feel like that's what it comes down to. I personally think Donovan Mitchell, if you look at this series, both teams match up, I think he's the best player on the floor, probably Jalen Brunson a little bit behind him. And then you got James Harden, which means, actually, I don't know, Carl. I mean, it's a really tough series. I think both of these conference finals could go 7 games, honestly. I think these could be 2 7-game series and could be a lot of fun. So we should be in store for some really good basketball here before we get to the NBA finals, which is, you know, this is what everyone waits for all year, right? For the NBA season. You know, you wait for these conference finals matchups in the finals. You know, these are usually the best teams. Even some of them might be beat up at times, but you know, more often than not, these are usually the best teams in the league, and you should be seeing a pretty good brand of basketball being played, as opposed to what you normally see in the regular season. I don't know how the NBA fixes that personally, where, you know, there's like basically 2 different products. There's the NBA regular season product, which at times is not very entertaining to watch. And then the playoff product, which is just amazing to watch, right? Like some of the best basketball at times gets played here. You really get to see who the real best players are. And yeah, so I'm excited for these conference finals. Let me know who you think is going to come out of here. But if I had to take a guess, I think we're going to see a Thunder Cavaliers NBA Finals, in my opinion. But I don't know. What do you think? I think either way could be. I think either way, whoever comes out of the West is probably going to stomp these Eastern Conference teams, in my opinion. So yeah. Now, final story of the day is a little bit different change of pace here, not a stick and ball sport. So, over the weekend, Ronda Rousey returned to fighting, something that I think a lot of people didn't think would ever happen. Returned to fighting, took on Gina Carano. Now, this was called a dream fight. I completely disagree with that. That was definitely not a dream fight. The dream fight was always Ronda Rousey versus Chris Cyborg. That was the dream fight. And Ronda is not going to take that fight because Ronda would likely lose that fight. I love my phone going off. Let's see what that notification is. It's someone going live on Twitch that I haven't watched in months. Yay. I'm sure someone feels about that when I go live on Twitch, so whatever. But the bigger thing I want to talk, Ronda won the fight in 17 seconds, immediately took her down, got an armbar in, and submitted her. I mean, Gina, from my understanding, did not really train traditionally for this fight. She was just trying to make sure she could lose weight, like I'm trying to do right now. Lose weight just to be in better shape and to make weight for the fight. That was kind of what Gina's main concern was. I don't think she did too much actual, takedown defense, things like that. I mean, I don't know. Gina Carano hasn't fought since 2009. That is 17 years ago. Absolutely insane sideshow kind of fight thing here, which is kind of what everything with MVP and Jake Paul ends up being. It ends up being this kind of sideshow, freak show kind of nonsense. And then they always kind of well, the guys are getting paid. The guys are getting paid. And I'm sure they are, so I think the bigger thing that if you watch this event, one of the biggest things that you heard talked about was this is real competition for the UFC now. And I'm not sure how. Right. It's one thing to run a one-off event and you just pay everyone with Netflix's money or whatever it is. I'm not sure where the money's coming from with this. We're seeing some of the actual, disclosed purses, it's actually from I follow MMA media a lot, and MMA media always, bemoans fighter pay. And I agree, fighter pay needs to go. I personally think in the UFC, I think everything should be doubled. Right now, everything bare minimum should be doubled. No one should be fighting for 15K or 15K, 15K show, 15K win. It should just be straight, flat, 30 to at least, I don't even think 30 should be the minimum. I personally think the minimum, you step into an octagon, you step into a UFC ring and fight, you bare minimum should be making $80,000. Bare minimum, in my opinion, you should be making 80 grand. No show and win, 80K on top of also bonuses and things like that. I think that's what the pay model should be. That should be bare minimum. But some of the pay that we saw, it was a little interesting because you saw this, Ronda Rousey, she's never made money. And she made $2 million, I believe. Ronda Rousey made $5 or $6 million to fight Holly Holm. I could have sworn she made $5-6 million to fight Amanda Nunes. Ronda Rousey has made way more money than what she made on this lick. Francis Ngannou, I think, made a couple $1 million. The guy he fought only made $100K, which is weird because Francis talked about how every time he fights, he wants the person that makes just as much as him. And then here it's I'll give you an extra $100K. Here's my $100K bonus. Can MVP promotions, Jake Paul, Netflix, can this compete with Netflix? No. Or not compete with Netflix, compete with the UFC. I don't think so. Because I don't know what the business model is. All right, is the business model just run a kind of freak show event every 6 months? Because with retired fighters? Because eventually, that was the Bellator playbook, right? Back in 2014, 2015, 2016, back when they had Kimbo Slice. If you ever watched that fight, it was very clear neither one of those guys should have been fighting. I believe one of them died in the ring once or twice or something like that. I had like a heart attack in the middle of the fight. Like, so you get these freak shows. I mean, some of these guys fighting, it looks rough. I mean, Junior Dos Santos, beast in his prime, he did not look like he had any business in there fighting. You know, he was trying his best throwing those leg kicks, and it looked like he hurt his leg, and then he couldn't move, and then he just got absolutely knocked out brutally. You know, this MMA, I feel like is not. We see it the earliest MMA. It would kind of be these sideshow freak fights, but I feel like you can't do that now because you really run the risk of guys getting just seriously hurt. And Junior Dos Santos, I don't even think he got paid particularly like amazing. Well, the UFC wouldn't pay Junior, yeah, because Junior Dos Santos is washed up. Junior Dos Santos' best years are like 10, 12 years ago. Nate Diaz looked terrible versus Mike Perry. Just looked awful. Did not look to be in condition to be in there fighting. You know, just took a beating from Mike Perry. They had to stop the fight due to cuts. And he was cut up all over his head. He got brutalized in that fight. And they're the guys who are running this and Jake Paul are talking about, oh, we can run that fight back. I don't know who wants to see that again. I don't want to see Nate Diaz get beat up again by Mike Perry, who Mike Perry's been game. Mike Perry's been doing bare knuckle. He's made out a very decent post UFC career with bare knuckle boxing. I think I don't know if he does bare knuckle MMA as well, which that is a thing. But in bare knuckle boxing, he's very good, very very good, very competitive fighter. He's been fighting. Nate Diaz has been infrequent. I think what he did a boxing match with Jake Paul, and it just doesn't look. No one wants to see that. That is not something people want to see. I don't understand that. The Francis Ngannou thing, he fought some guy who was like a light heavyweight and then moved up to heavyweight to fight him. And, you know, yeah, he beat him really quickly. I don't know who else Francis is going to fight. I really don't know. Francis is starting to get up there in age himself. He didn't look particularly great. I'm not sure how Francis would actually fare versus a, you know, Tom Aspinall right now. Actually, Tom Aspinall, I think I would probably take Tom Aspinall to beat Francis Ngannou right now. So there is that. They're kind of talking about a John Jones is under contract with the UFC. That fight's not going to happen. So I don't understand why they keep talking. Like the UFC is not going to let John out of his contract. He probably still has like a bunch of fights left on that deal. So that's not going to happen. I don't get why Jake and MVP promotion. This is a really common thing I've noticed with Jake. Constantly trying to like book UFC guys for whatever reason. I don't really understand that. It's kind of one of those weird things where he's just constantly trying to book Dana's guys for things. Don't really understand it. Very strange. I don't see that happening. But can this compete with the UFC? No, because it's one-off events. And they're going to do an event, every 6 months, maybe do 2 a year. That's not a real promotion, right? Like the UFC currently has like at least over 250 odd fighters on their current roster. I can actually look that up right now. They have just a ton of fighters on their roster. This is very different when you run a one-off event and you just, you know, bring in 20, 30 guys to fight. Well, that's very different, you know, than what the UFC runs. That's a very different operation. There are currently, actually, I got it wrong. There are currently 550 to anywhere from around 600 fighters rostered to the UFC right now. That is a completely different deal, right? When you have to pay that many people as opposed to a one-off show where you only pay people however much money. So it's a completely different business model. I have no clue if they're actually going to set up a promotion where you're running shows, not weekly, but if we're talking like monthly, maybe 2 a month, are you, you know, where you probably need 200, 300 fighters, are you really going to be able to pay every fighter like that, you know, without the financial backing of something like Netflix? Who's going to fund this? Where's the money going to come from? You know, ticket sales. I can already tell. I know they're trying to do, oh, it's because of the lights in the arena. That's why it looked. No, you looked in the crowd. You could tell there's a lot of empty seats. So they probably comped a bunch of seats. So this thing didn't even necessarily sell a lot of tickets. I'm sure it got watched a lot because Netflix has that reach, right? Like Netflix does have that reach, and they probably took some viewers off of UFC, but it was like a fight night card at the Apex. It's like, you know, I wasn't even looking forward to the UFC card. even if there wasn't this Netflix show on, right? I probably wasn't going to watch that card anyways. So competitor, probably not. I really don't think so. I just highly doubt it. So yeah, that's my stance. That's my thoughts. That's the Mike News Blitz. This video is probably like 20 minutes long. My videos go long, but I want to do something like this. This won't be a daily thing, but I'll try to do it as often as I can for you guys, just to do something a little different when I don't have like a singular thing where I can talk for 20 minutes on it. But yeah, so if you like this video, leave a like, all that other good stuff. I'm not sure if it's good to ask for likes. Almost feels bad asking for likes. I feel like if you liked it, you're going to like it. But on any of these things, what do you think? What's your take on it? Let me know. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me in all the places. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.